Is the violin hard to learn? Yes! The fact of the matter is that all instruments are extremely difficult to learn at some point in the learning process. In fact, it probably takes an equal amount of time to master any particular instrument. However, the violin is unique to some extent in that it's extremely difficult in the very beginning. Whereas many instruments are not terribly difficult in the beginning, the violin is extremely difficult from the get-go. I'm Joel Kennedy, and today I'm going to talk about the 4 top reasons why violin is so difficult to learn. Okay, so the first reason why learning a bowed-stringed instrument is so difficult is because your hands are having to move in completely contrasting ways, right? So you've got your bow moving in a horizontal plane, but at the same time, your left hand has to work in a vertical plane, right? And so not only does your left hand have to work in a vertical plane, but it also has to work in a horizontal motion at the same time. So you have your horizontal plane going like this, and sometimes a vertical plane at the same time as your left hand doing a vertical plane and going in a horizontal plane like this, right? So you have all these contrasting motions. Now with most instruments, if you're even using 2 hands at a time, most of the time both of your hands are doing similar types of motions, right? So with the piano or the clarinet or the flute or the oboe or the saxophone or the timpani or even, the harp, so it's a lot easier for your brain to process, similar motions, even if they're different, but they're similar motions, than it is to train your mind to do something that's so counterintuitive to an extent. So when you're learning a bowed string instrument, chances are you're going to have to train your mind to do something that it normally never does. And so you're kind of starting from scratch. Okay, so the second reason why learning an instrument like the violin is so difficult is because the proper technique for learning a bowed stringed instrument is completely counterintuitive. So in your right hand, when you're holding the bow, your intuition is to grab it like this, right? Because you have strength, you have control, right? But actually the proper way to hold the bow is a way in which you feel like you're going to drop it. In fact, you're very close to dropping it, holding it properly with a bent pinky and a bent bow and your fingers, resting on top, and you're not really grabbing it very much. So very counterintuitive. The other very counterintuitive thing about the violin is that, again, you want to hold the neck probably like a baseball bat or a club or whatever, right? Because you have the most strength, you have the most control. But that's wrong. When you're holding the violin, you have to barely be holding it. In fact, you're not really holding it. You're holding it mostly with your chin and your shoulder. So really your left hand is barely contacting the instrument so it can move around and do what it needs to do. It's very counterproductive. So these counterintuitive reasons are why most people get very frustrated and they quit. However, if you know about these things ahead of time, you can actually have a much greater chance of success. I just did a video on that. I'll put a link in the description. It's called, Can I Teach Myself Violin? The answer is yes, but I highly recommend you check out the video. The third reason why learning the violin is so difficult is that there are no frets on the fingerboard. There's no indication at all where you put your fingers. Now, on most instruments, like guitar, right? You have some kind of frets. So all you have to do is place your fingers in between the frets and it'll be in tune. As long as your guitar's in tune, you're in tune. But not so with the violin. So the only way to play in tune on the violin is with intensive ear training over years of practice and repetitively putting your fingers down thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times over thousands of hours of practice. And only then will you have any chance at all at putting your fingers in the correct spot. But it gets harder than that because the distance between your fingers actually, so if you look at these distances here, I have a larger distance here, I have a little distance here, I have a larger distance here. These distances actually change as you move around on the instrument. So even though these distances, I can learn these distances in this spot of the fingerboard, as soon as I go to a different part of the fingerboard, now the distances shrink a little bit. So really, there's it's practically an infinite variety of different kinds of spaces depending on what string you're on and what position you are on somewhere on the instrument. And it also depends on the setup of the instrument and how the instrument is tuned. And that's where your ear training comes into play. So that's one of the big reasons why it's going to take thousands of hours of practice in order to know where to put these fingers. Okay, so before I talk about the fourth and final reason why the violin is so hard, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, or maybe it's over here to the right. It's a little red thing that says subscribe on it. Let me know that you guys want to see more videos like this. And if you have any questions or comments, put those below as well. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because you'll get a notification when I create a new video. And I'm always making new videos. So let's get on to the fourth and final reason why the violin is so difficult. Simply put, it's very difficult to sound good on the violin. It's very difficult to create a sound that is pleasing to the ears. Well, why is that? Well, it's because to sound good on the violin, you have to control an infinite amount of variables with this thing right here, right? The stick and horsehair. So what I mean is you have to be able to control the weight versus the speed. Okay, so if I pull my bow with this weight and this speed, kill me now, right? However, what if I pull it exactly the same speed but have a little bit less weight? Completely different. Now, what if I keep the same weight but I pull it way faster? Well, it sounds terrible. But what if I add a little bit of weight? Well, at least it creates a sound, right? So controlling the weight versus the bow speed is everything. But wait, there's more. The bow is asymmetrical, so that means it's heavier at the frog than it is at the tip. And you're holding it at the frog, so you have more leverage, so all your weight is going to be down here. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you have to control the speed and the weight differently depending on where you are in the bow. So if I start out with a certain speed and weight at the frog, I actually have to have less weight and more speed as I go to the tip. Less weight, less weight, less weight, and more speed. Same is true going to the frog. You have to decrease the weight and add speed, decrease speed. Now, if you didn't, you would be right. You'd be doing wah 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 wah, and who wants to listen to that, right? So not only do you have to change the weight and the speed of the bow constantly, but you also have to pay attention to where you are on the violin. So am I next to the fingerboard? Am I next to the bridge? Well, the string vibrates completely differently depending on where you are. So you have to manage your bow differently depending on where the bow is in between your bridge and your fingerboard. The other thing is that every string is different, right? So the G string I can put a lot of weight on. The E string, I can't, right? Because the E string is a thinner string, and so you can't put the same amount of weight. So every string has its own kind of weight that it wants, and that's accompanied with a different kind of speed. Also, what changes it is where your left hand is. Yes, even where your left hand is, because the further up I am on the fingerboard, it changes the string length, which changes how the string vibrates, which will also change the weight and the speed of the bow. So you literally have an infinite amount of variables. So how do you overcome all that? Well, number one, proper technique. Number two, consistent practice. Number three, a lot of practice. Just putting in thousands of hours. But the good news is that if you do start off correctly with correct technique and you have good practice habits, you can overcome those things much faster than people who just kind of go at it. So like I said before, I did create a video. It's called Can I Teach Myself the Violin? And I put a link below, so check it out. Because if you watch that video and you're new to the violin or you're thinking about starting the violin, if you watch the video, I talk about the primary mistakes that most people make when they first start out the violin. So if you don't make those, well, then your chances of success are very high, and who knows, you might actually even have fun. So if you have any other questions or comments, just put them below and let me know, because I answer just about all the questions that I get. And don't forget, here at Kennedy Violins, we are players and teachers, so we're always happy to answer any kind of questions you have anytime. Have a nice day.